if you, for some reason, have not heard, the United States decided to enter the conflict between Israel and Iran. They made several strategic bombing runs, bombed 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities that they believe are being used to enrich uranium to the point where it can be used as a nuclear weapon. And I thought we'd kind of talk a little bit about how, as Christians, we should be responding to events like this, global events. Maybe they don't directly involve us in terms of fighting, or that's not on our soil, but still, as Christians, we should be following it, and we should be approaching it in a certain way. Whenever you're dealing with the Middle East, Israel, Iran, that area, you always have a bit of Bible prophecy. We're not really going to talk about Bible prophecy today. It's kind of a little more advanced stuff. But how do you, as a Christian, or how do I, as a Christian, how should we be responding to this? It's a pretty charged issue in our country. Should we be getting involved? Should we not be getting involved? And regardless of what you think we should or should not be doing, we have our political beliefs, but we also understand that everything should come down from God. So we should be working our way down. What would God want us to do? And the first thing that we need to recognize is that we need to be compassionate for everybody involved. We need to feel the pain of people in Iran who are just citizens there, and their government has taken them to war. The regime for the past 50 years has funded terrorism, has attacked other countries, has basically said that they want to obliterate Israel off the map, and that is really their only goal. Everything that they do is to get to that point. We can still sit there and we can feel compassion for people caught in the middle of these conflicts, Israeli citizens, Iranian citizens, whether you believe that Israel should have or should not have attacked Iran. You can still sit there and feel compassion for the people who live there, who are just trying to go about their daily lives, who are just trying to take care of their families. I mean, even Jesus wept. Jesus wept when his friend Lazarus was killed. Fellow human beings, and showing that compassion may help people realize that Christianity is really the compassionate religion. You know, it's really the compassionate faith. You know, we want everyone to, in the end, see the forgiveness, the grace, the love of God. How can God make something like this happen? Well, God gave everybody free will, and there's always going to be situations that we have that, you know, we kind of question, how can this happen? How does this happen? Which moves us into our next point, is that God is sovereign. The leaders in power now are the leaders that God wants in power, whether they agree with the God, whether they believe in the God or not. Nebuchadnezzar had, God controlled him. Daniel came up to him and said that you were going to live for 7 years as if though you were a cow. And he wandered the fields for 7 years, eating grass and living outside as a cow. And then when God finally gave him his sanity back, he said that Daniel's God is sovereign. Daniel's God is the God. God controls the rulers. God controls the events. And sometimes we don't understand the purpose of God's actions. But whether we understand the purpose of God's actions or not, what we should still be doing is we should still be leaning in the faith of knowing that we have a loving God, and that everything that happens in this world, and that everything, all these events, wars, whatever, is part of his larger plan. Psalms 103:19 says that his sovereignty rules over all. You know, his sovereignty ruled over the Pharaoh when the Jews were asking him to let them go. God was the one that hardened his heart to show that he was in control, to show his power through the plagues, and show his power through parting the Red Sea for the Jews and for Moses as they crossed, and then closing the sea back up once Pharaoh's armies were in the seabed chasing the Jews. 2:21 tells us that it is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and he establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. He's the one who is in control of the kings. He is the one who's in control of the leaders. This is all part of the overall plan of God to one day have his son Jesus Christ return to earth and to rule over earth. And the third thing we must do is we must just continue to pray. We must continue to pray for peace. We must continue to pray for justice. We must continue to pray for our leaders and the leaders of other countries. Pray that the leaders of Iran finally come to the negotiating table to end the war. Pray for our leaders to conduct themselves in a way that they feel is the best way moving forward, whether that's to continue military actions or whether that's just to leave this action as it is. There's going to be escalations. There's going to be probably attempts on our assets overseas. There's probably going to be attempts on outposts and bases that the United States has in the region. There's also going to be probably attempts maybe here at home, here in the United States. Cells that may be activated. There was just a shooting at a church this morning. And luckily, it sounds like the only person who lost their life was the person who was doing the shooting. Whether it was a planned terrorist attack or whether it was just because someone didn't like Christians, we don't know yet. We're not going to speculate. But just remember that we should always constantly be praying. We should be praying for the defeat of evil. Many people feel like the Iranian regime, the Iranian leaders, they're evil. The way that they treat their citizens, the way that they treat women, the way that they treat anyone who doesn't agree with them, whether it's Christians or people from the West. Their whole ideology is based on the destruction of other people so that they can take supreme power. So I'm going to leave some Bible verses down in the description below. I would strongly suggest that we take time whenever events like these happen to first off remember that we can care for the people even if they're on the other side. There's always going to be innocent people caught in the middle of these conflicts. There's always going to be innocent people that are just there just because their government tells them or because their government leaders have made decisions for them or made decisions and they don't have any control over it. We got to remember that God is sovereign. God has complete control over the world, over the earth, over leaders at all times. And he's done this with leaders that have believed in him when it comes to leaders like David or Solomon, or when it comes to leaders who have never believed in him, like Nebuchadnezzar or the Pharaoh, or any of these leaders who came in and invaded Jerusalem. The Romans. He had complete control and sovereignty over the Romans when Jesus was crucified. The last thing we got to be doing is we just got to be praying. We got to be praying for everybody involved. We got to be praying for civilians. We got to be praying for our troops. We got to be praying for our leaders. We got to be praying for other countries. We got to be praying exclusive or continuously. Praying for peace. So I hope you guys find this helpful. Remember, always be in prayer on situations like this. Don't get caught up in the news media. The news media is completely biased. You're only going to get one side. It's really, really hard on events like this to not just sit there being glued to the television or just continually scrolling on X. I would suggest that maybe you spend 15, 20 minutes watching the news and then shut it off. And then maybe a couple hours later, hey, has something happened? No, we're still talking about the same stuff, but just in a different way. So also consider your sources, consider the news sources. There's a lot of outlets out there that pretend to be legitimate news sources, and also just be careful of the people that you're listening to on social media. Remember, the only thing that we need to put complete trust in is our Bibles and is God. So like, follow, subscribe for more. I'll see you all in the next video.